Hey, this is Beatrice outside with still breathable air in California with Parole Amate. Today we're at the letter I, and I want to start with io. That comes from, it's spelled I-O, but it comes from E-O that was in spoken Latin, and earlier it was ego, of course, ego, ego, that has an Indo-European origin. And I love the description I found this week that says it was written in the 14th century. One owns being in the conscience it has of itself. So il proprio essere nella coscienza che ha di sé. I remember learning how to spell I in middle school, and it being very confused that you always have to capitalize just that pronoun. Not only that, but of course, like all other pronouns in English, it also always has to be explicit. Unlike in Italian, where you can totally say instead, because of the declination, right? You don't need to say always I'm speaking, but you could also just say sto parlando without the io. And those two facts, right, that it's can never be implicit and it's always capitalized, are, I think, signs of a certain individualism, because other pronouns are not capitalized. So that's that. And then I was stavo journeying through my bookshelves, and these two books caught my eye. L'isola di Arturo by Elsa Morante, Isola, Island. And then this book, in this case, it's the author whose first name starts with an I, Igiaba, Scego. And both in these books, at the very end of this and the very beginning of this, it's stories of journeys. The first is really a journey of abandonment. After Arturo, this is a book written in 1957, and this character, Arturo, is a child who had to become a teenager all by himself, and under very harsh circumstances in the island of Procida near Naples. And he finally decides to leave the island. And it's so hard to look at the sight of the island disappearing that he asks his companion not to tell him when the island has disappeared. I am explaining this that I'm now going to read in Italian, but I don't have a translation of this book, unfortunately, in English, so I don't want to create, I have too much respect for translators to create a bad literal translation. So I will just read it in Italian and give you this sense of it, give you a little bit of a sense of it. So, non mi va di vedere Procida mentre si allontana e si confonde, diventa una cosa grigia. Preferisco fingere che non sia esistita. Perciò, fino al momento che non se ne vede più niente, sarà meglio che io non guardi là. Tu avvisami a quel momento. And then finally, the very last sentence is when Silvestro says, okay, Arturo, su, puoi svegliarti. You can wake up now, Arturo. The island is nowhere to be seen. L'isola non si vedeva più. And now we go to the very beginning of Igiaba's narrative. And in this case, it's all about Adua, this character who's lived in Rome for many decades. And she's now contemplating going back. So this is the story of the potentiality of a return back to Somalia after so long in Rome. And the idea is an abandoned land that was ravaged by war and now is supposedly at peace. Will the land be able to welcome her back? And the beginning of the book is really Adua finding a property act where her home, her father's home, is known to be hers. So technically she can return. And she's thinking about it, and she says, ogni notte prima di addormentarmi mi chiedo se potrò pure io, come mio padre, costruire nella nostra terra il poco di avvenire che mi è rimasto. And then another little bit. And so this is about, she's wondering, right? Will she be able to build in her land of origin the little future that's left over? Because she feels herself to have lived many decades in Italy and sort of being in a mid phase of life. And then she's asking her friend who's already returned, volevo sapere se era davvero cambiato tanto il nostro paese e se noi che da più di 30 anni viviamo fuori avremmo potuto legarci di nuovo alla nuovissima Somalia della pace, la pace. Prima di agosto credevo che la parola pace fosse una bella parola, this is a little bit later in the book. Nessuno mi aveva detto che pace è di fatto una parola ambigua. So this is really, again, I'm not going to try to do a proper translation. The real translation of this book is available by Jamie Richards. But the idea is, will I be able to find my country of origin recognizable after 30 years? And there is a questioning about peace seen as an ambiguous word, not as a beautiful, automatically positive word, but an ambiguous word, because what does that mean? After, again, decades of war in Somalia, then suddenly in 2013, peace is here. Does that mean just business, as her friend in the book seems to indicate? And how does this beautiful character of Adua feel about that? Will she recognize her home? Which is a question I think we all have when we think of our place of origin. See you next week. Ciao.